If we just wait this out and the supply chain issues that we're currently seeing today, will they just go away on their own? Or can we go back to where we were and go back to business? Or does this call for some different kind of change going forward?
No, I believe that this is a fundamental rewriting of globalization for many reasons. So I don't think that globalization is going to be completely undone. What happened in the supply chain was based on false economics, false forecasts, and false predictions, and false operational models. I don't think we'll ever be able to go back because certain assumptions that were never questioned have emerged to be completely false. For example, transportation will perpetually be inexpensive. Not true. Transportation costs skyrocketed, first due to post-port inspection and additional scrutiny required by September 11th, when realized that free transportation of goods and people had some downside with it, right? That became evident during September 11th. Second, transportation of goods became even more expensive during oil shock 2, and now what I call oil shock 3, led by the Ukraine invasion, right? Where oil prices have gone to all-time highs again. So that's resulted in transportation costs going up. So those two assumptions were. There was another assumption that was being made, that intellectual property and competitive advantage of OEMs was not in question. This may have been the case with Japan, but it's a fundamentally different situation in China. And indeed, some other countries also, where intellectual property is actively appropriated, shall we say, by other companies and maybe even by governments. And the appropriation of this intellectual property was never something that people thought about. Third, consumers have changed, and the ability to fulfill demand quickly was not possible when your supply chains are so long. Fourth, people operated with just-in-time kind of mentality, and that was really not. And then the elephant in the room is, I think, the big change in geopolitics. As I mentioned, the Japan model was wildly successful, but that is not the way things have turned out, especially with China. China, the geopolitics concerning the US and China have certainly taken a very different direction than those that did with an engagement, a constructive engagement with Japan. Japan was not seeking to become a world power. Japan was a pacifist constitution. Japan followed the rules-based international order. That just simply did not happen as broadly in China. So the geopolitics that actually allowed China to become as wealthy as it has, have at the same time now, with the change of just a few people at the very top of the Chinese ruling class, have caused China to become a geopolitical foe. And therefore, I don't think that even there will be any government acquiescence. Certainly, I think there'll be active roadblocks towards further globalization of supply chains, especially into China. And this is not a secret. I think it's already very clear. There's tariffs put in by Trump, but continued by the Biden administration and not being removed. That's a roadblock. And the signal, I think, over here is very clear. We don't want things to go back to business as normal. Look for other solutions, look for other models.
What really drove that realization? Was it the fact that China ultimately got to a certain level of strength? Or were these other factors things that kind of nudged us in that direction, and then we woke up and said, wow?
I think there were a lot of factors. I think, first of all, the intellectual property issues that we began to experience. This goes back all the way to the early 2000s. Code that was being used by networking companies in China was actually the same and had the same bugs, in fact, as code that was being used in US products. We obviously know that in many cases there's well-publicized situations of products being sold in other parts of the world with no license, no royalties, nothing being paid. So these are US designed products being built on the third shift and being sold in other parts of the world, and people had no clue this was happening. So there's a realization of intellectual property theft, actual economic harm where designs and know-how were being actually appropriated for the benefit of companies that did not develop that intellectual property. But I think the biggest one has been the geopolitical, where under the first 30 years, there was no expectation that that China would become a geopolitical foe, and I think that is what has really changed. And frankly, it was just changed by change in leadership of a few people at the very top of the Communist Party. It's amazing how just changing a few people around can shift the course of history, but that's what I believe has actually happened.